We are recording.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. All right, we're going to start off with announcements. Does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share with the group?
I know I've shared this before, but in about a week and a half, I will have 3 minutes to tell a group at the Medical Library Association why koha is such a wonderful thing and why it should be their favorite tool. And if you have 3 minutes, later on in the meeting, I'd like to give you a draft of what I have to say. If you can, that's still, as I say, very rough, but we need to get the rhythm down.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, I'm going to put a link in the chat box here. That's a link to the documentation meeting agenda for this afternoon. The koha documentation, and I suppose I could throw in a link for that too. So Nicole Lingard from Bywater used to do like maybe 99.8% of the documentation for koha. And Nicole left about 2 years ago to work for cPanel, or no, Ruth is at cPanel. Nicole is at Red Hat.
Yeah.
And since then, the documentation has sorely lagged behind the pace of developments in koha. There's been a lot of new features that have been added that are completely undocumented, because when Nicole was really involved, I mean, I guess that's what she did like in her off hours for fun, was she wrote the documentation for koha. I mean, I remember doing the training with Nicole in 2012, and in the middle of the training, she says, oh, well, that's something that I need to change. And she'd flip over to the documentation in the middle of the training and edit the koha manual and then go back to the training. So it was always up to date. It was always good. But since she's left, it's really fallen behind. And the documentation team, now there's a team of people trying to do that, but it's not a very big team. I have made very minor contributions. So it'd be great if some more people could come to the meeting at the IRC meeting there and maybe learn more about the documentation this afternoon, ask questions. And it's not that, you know, the simplest thing you can do, there is a, and I don't have that link, there's a to-do list. These are the things that are missing from the documentation. That's the simplest thing we could do to help the documentation along, is if you see something, thanks Lizette, if you see something that ought to be in the documentation that isn't there or it's incomplete, if you could just leave a note on that to-do list that says, this doesn't make sense, I don't understand this, this is missing. That would be the simplest thing that we could do to help this along. And to add to that to-do list, all you gotta do is click on it and type. It's as simple as that. So I wanted to mention that because the documentation is problematic. So
Great. Thank you. So so when people are adding new features to koha, they're not taking the time to document what they've added?
That's most of the documentation comes from the release notes. That's one of the things that the documentation team talked about, is maybe that the people that sign off should be responsible for making sure that things are documented. And that's what I said is, you know, it's hard enough to get people to sign off, but, you know, that adds an extra barrier to signing off. And so, you know, the developers are supposed to put in the release notes, this is what this feature does, this is how it's supposed to work. But they're not documenting it. And sometimes what they put in those release notes doesn't really explain adequately what the software does. So it's kind of an issue where the developers, I mean, that's the reason it's an issue, is because we used to have somebody that was doing a really good job at making sure everything was documented. And when that stopped happening, nobody's workflow changed.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think the development team is trying to address. But it's I know, how many of you have ever used the housebound feature in Koha? How many of you know what it does? Nobody knows what it does because the people that wrote it didn't write any documentation for it. And the release notes, all they say is, we added a housebound feature. It doesn't explain at all what it does or how it works. So there's this whole feature, there's this whole component of Koha that's completely undocumented. There are other things, and some of these things that aren't documented well, go back, way back. So, but since Nicole left, there's a lot more stuff that's been falling through the cracks. A lot of system preferences that what's in the documentation now doesn't match what the text of the preferences is, what the drop downs say. There's just a lot of holes in the documentation. So, but that's the number one thing any of us could do is if you see something that's missing, go to that link that's Framapad and just write, there's no documentation for this. And that would be, just identifying what's not in the manual would be a big help for the documentation team.
Okay. I think Fred had enough.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention. All right. Anyone else? Announcements? All right. Before we continue on, let's take a few minutes to introduce ourselves. We try to do this from time to time. See some new names and some old names, and so it's good for us to let each other know who we are. And I'll just go around on the panels that I see and ask you to do just a brief introduction of yourself. And I'll start in my upper left corner, which happens to be John Sturbens.
Hi, I'm John Sturbens. I'm the manager of technical services, collections, and library automation at the University of Michigan's Kresge Business Administration Library. I'm also the treasurer of koha-US.
All right. I'm Christopher Brannon. I'm the IT coordinator. I had to think for a second there. I'm the IT coordinator for the Coeur d'Alene Public Library in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I also help manage the Koha system for our consortium, the Cooperative Information Network, which comprises of 28 libraries in Idaho and a few in Washington. And I'm also the koha-US president. Fred King.
Fred King. I'm a medical librarian at Washington Hospital Center in Washington, D.C. Started on Koha 2013. I am the system administrator. I am the cataloging department. I'm the tech services department. I am 1/3 or 1/2 of the reference department. We're a small library. And I also modified Koha to be an author's catalog and just added a few new zebra indexes, which is kind of interesting and challenging.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and I'm Koha member at large.
Yep.
And you're so busy, you need 2 pairs of glasses.
Yes. Actually, the hospital did vision screening a couple days ago, and when they saw me wearing reading glasses over my bifocals, they suggested I go up to the eye clinic.
Fred, unfortunately, I've started doing the same thing when I'm tinkering on one of my models at home. It's sad. All right.
That's sad. These things happen.
Yeah. Jason Robb.
Oh, I'm Jason Robb, the Seek and Find coordinator. I work at the Southeast Kansas Library System in Iola, Kansas, which is in Southeast Kansas. We run a consortium of 45 libraries, 44 publics, 1 academic. I'm in charge of that. And I'm also your secretary.
All right. Before I continue on and forget these, we have some people that introduced themselves in group chat. Rachel says she's from Idaho State Archives on Koha, February 2017. Welcome, Rachel. Heather, Technical Services Librarian, San Francisco Maritime NHP Research Center on Koha for a few years, supported by Bywater. Heather let's see here. Oh, it flipped on me, sorry. Heather with Virginia Military Institute, Assistant Director of Preston Library, just visiting today for the first time. Welcome, Heather. Getting an idea of Koha as I've never used it before. Well, I hope we don't scare you. Katie, middle school librarian at Hathaway Brown School in Cleveland, Ohio. First year up on Koha. Excellent. Let's see here. Hi, I'm Christian Tangway. I hope I didn't slaughter your name. I work for the Open Book Library, a special LGBTQ library, part of the LGBTQ plus Community Center of Montreal. I'm involved with Koha QC. Welcome. All right. Continuing on, Lisette.
I'm Lizette Shear from the Latah County Library District in Moscow, Idaho, and I am also part of the ValNet. We're part of the ValNet consortium, and I'm on the fundraising and conference committees.
Great, thank you. Nancy.
Nancy Keener, Washoe County Library System. I'm the system administrator. We hosted KohaCon 2013, and we've been on Koha since January 2012.
Great. George.
I'm George Williams. I work for the Northeast Kansas Library System. We have a 51 library consortium called Nexpress that will soon be called Next Kansas. And I'm the vice president of koha-US.
Thank you. Christopher Davis.
Good morning, I'm Christopher Davis. I am the Systems and Electronic Services Librarian at the Uintah County Library. That's UINTAH. We're a small, we're a library, we're part of a consortium where we share a catalog, but a much smaller consortium of four branches, sorry. Just added one a few weeks ago. So I enjoy using Koha. It's been great. We were on Circudenix before, and I'm happy to be on Koha now. So a lot of my colleagues and coworkers are also happy to be on Koha. So happy to be here at this meeting. I have a question at the end that I'd like to ask during the free open time, but I'll be here. Thanks.
Okay. Todd Goatley.
Hi, my name's Todd Goatley. I'm with Bywater Solutions. I've been here for 4 years. I do fundraising and support, and I'm also with fundraising with koha-US.
Thank you, Todd. Now I saw Andy Bose pop in and out. Andy, are you still there? Okay. Well, Andy, if you can let us know who you are through chat, that would be awesome. Let's see here. Candace Hope, are you able to? Oh, there you are. But not hearing anything. Saw you take your mic, your mute off. Some technical difficulty. Feel free to let the chat. I see that she's working on that, so I'll let her do that, and I'm going to see if, let's see here, Nick.
Yeah, can you hear me?
You?
I just unmuted it. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so I'm Nick Weingard, faculty librarian at Valley Christian High School in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. A small independent school here, just using Koha for this. I think we're coming up on our year anniversary.
Excellent.
Sorry, Nick, what part of Colorado?
Highlands Ranch.
We're about 30 minutes from Colorado, so that's why I asked.
Oh, okay, yeah, South Denver.
Awesome, thank you, Nick. Candace wrote, hi, I'm Candace Hope. I'm the circulation supervisor at Payson City Library in Payson, Utah. Great, thank you, Candace. Joel.
He's probably freezing up in Minnesota, so not even enough he can move his mouth.
All right, Joel, jump in when you can, either on video or the chat. How about Gita?
Yeah, I can tell you is down in Round Rock. She's in just outside of Austin. She's with Round Rock Public Library.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Joel, I see you unmuted your mic. Are you able to tell us?
Yes.
All right.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joel Sass from the Plum Creek Library System in Worthington, Minnesota. And we're a consortium of 30, I believe 35 libraries. I'm the network systems administrator and also the manager of the koha system for the consortium.
Awesome. How many people do you have in your consortium?
How many people?
Or libraries, I mean, sorry.
Oh, close to 35.
All right. Excellent. All right. And Gita did say hello in the chat. Hello, Gita. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's good to get to know people and faces and names. All right. In the agenda, you'll notice after the announcements, I have listed breaking the Linux barrier. This is a topic that's going to stay on the agenda. I won't spend a lot of time on it right now. And Jason, in the future, we can probably put this towards the bottom because I don't want this to, always be the top focus. But just what the breaking the Linux barrier is. It's a thing that we need to be aware of and continually talking about and seeing what we can do to improve this. But one of the challenges with Koha, we try to get as many people as we can involved in programming and bug fixing and all that good stuff. Supporting the open source community. The challenge is a lot of the libraries are not Linux based. A lot of us are still operating in the Windows world, and Linux is a little bit foreign to us. And so the challenge for people using Koha to get involved, more in-depth involvement with Koha behind the scenes, is that Linux barrier. Setting up an environment to put together the Linux system and the Koha system inside that system. I don't know about you. A lot of us, I know a lot of us are hosted, but there are some of you that I know that are also doing it on your own, and I applaud you. More power to you for maintaining your own system. But it is a challenge for a lot of us to set up a system, put up a test box, or a production server, and going beyond that, setting up the environment for being able to program and to submit patches, things of that nature, to do testing, to get what we call getify your environment so that you can create branches and do testing on different aspects of Koha. So this is something that we need to keep in mind and discuss from time to time. I had a nice little chat a few weeks ago with Nathan from Bywater about this, and we're tinkering around with some ideas and some thoughts. One of the things that I had mentioned that would be awesome down the road is if we had an environment that some of the more technically savvy people that know Linux better, if we had a way of setting up some sort of login system that you could log into, not just a sandbox, but something that you could log into, and you have your own test environment that you can throw stuff in, that you would be able to save your work, that you would be able to, that's getified, that you can get into the back end of things, and that you can make branches in, and be able to do all sorts of enhancements and patchwork on your own, rather than having to worry about maintaining a system that changes. Linux gets updated, or Koha gets updated, and those things change, and then you have to reinvent the wheel sometimes to get those things back up to where you were, so that you could continue on the work. that's been a struggle of mine, is being able to continue on in the work and not spend a lot of time having to, get that environment back up. So that's what that's about. Any comments before we move on? Okay. Well, if you have any thoughts about that. Oh, what?
Sorry, it took me a moment to find the mouse. Yeah, I know. I told you my desk flooded, right? It's what I would like to see, mostly breaking the Linux barrier, is getting more small libraries to use it and get comfortable with Linux and Koha, and not necessarily make patches.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a huge untapped market. I mean, libraries need ILS, or a lot of them do, and Koha is a very low-cost way of getting started.
All right. Any other thoughts on this before we move on?
I would like, I use Linux for desktop. I'm not so much into the servers world, but I'm familiar with a lot of terminology and things like that for Linux because I use it every day. But the other thing is, it's important to know that, as Richard Stallman isn't quite attributed to this, but sort of, free as in puppies, not as in beer. Linux is good to use, and it's free monetarily, but there is still a price to be paid. It takes a little, you kind of pay for it with time and trying to find the answer, because the people next door, the tech team next door doesn't, your IT department might not know it, but you have to go and find the solutions online for other people who do know it. But I don't know if that's too different than Windows, but anyway. So I'm willing to help out with that with what I can, and just wanted to let you know Linux might look a little scary, but it's really a great operating system.
Yeah, it's a bit like using DOS from the command line. Unfortunately, the number of people who've actually used DOS are getting fewer and fewer.
I miss those days.
Yeah, it was more fun.
All right, any other comments?
I just want to add that I think part of the beauty of Linux currently is that it's just really easy to install, almost easier than Windows. You don't require a license, there's no payment. So there are a number of things that you don't have to worry about. The GUI interface is very easy to navigate. Where you start getting into the power features of Linux is when you start getting into the command line. And I think the command line is one thing that kind of holds people off. But there are a lot of easy sites that you can query, you can go to, and you can pretty much find exactly what you want without having to spend a lot of time. So it's with the evolution of Google, it's gotten a lot easier, and I think people shouldn't be concerned stepping in. Maybe they need some assistance, and Chris is here, and I'm here, and a number of people that are on the board and with koha-US are more than willing to help if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I'd really like to speak.
I was going to say, most of the time you just copy and paste. Even if you're in the command line, you don't actually have to compose anything. People have already written it out for you, and you just copy it in there.
Yeah, I'd like to see a sort of GUI version of the server with easy links to all the things that you need to configure, like the Apache files and etc. Is going through here and then this folder and then var, then it gets a little complicated. I think that's a big part of the barrier.
Has the Koha community considered just baking their own Linux, their own Debian Koha distribution?
Roll their own? That I know of, there hasn't been any consideration.
I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just wondering if they have done that.
Yeah, it's just more work, and what they put out with Debian seems to satisfy what we need for Koha. So why try to go out and recreate something?
Right. Debian's good, so no, I totally understand.
Or maybe one of the smaller versions of Ubuntu could have sort of an add-on of some kind.
Well, the good news is that Koha runs on Ubuntu.
Yes.
Well, you know,
As a matter of fact, it's part of the packages. So if you did a query
Nice.
on Koha, you could actually download everything you need to spin it up on Ubuntu.
Right on.
Yeah, that's what I've done. That guy started over with a fresh installation to get up to Ubuntu 16.04 and Koha 17.11. I managed to break everything, but then I went back and fixed it.
Good job, Fred.
all right. Let's talk about 1711 upgrades, just to move forward here. 1711's out. I know that Bywater is gearing up to do upgrades in June. Anybody have any thoughts or experiences with 1711, the upgrade or new features that they'd like to share with the group?
This is probably not a feature a lot of people use, but I really like the fact that you can make a list by just uploading barcodes. You don't have to scan each one.
Well, I naturally came up with an immediate security concern.
Not you, George.
The holds history is available, will be available for staff. There'll be a tab to look at. You'll be able to see what the history is on a patron's holds. Unlike the reading history, there's no way for the patrons to opt out of keeping that hold history. There's no way to anonymize it. So that's data that's being collected, that's easily available for staff to access, which of course makes it something that, you know, if patrons don't want it saved, there's currently no way to make it not saved. So that's a concern of mine. You know, especially if I imagine that the eventual trend for this will be, you know, now that it's available in the staff client, at some point I imagine it will be available in the OPAC. And but currently, unlike the reading history in the OPAC, there's no way to delete the old information. So,
George, do you know if there's any system preference that's attached to that, whether it can be seen or not in the?
Yes, I believe that there's a system preference to make it so that it's not available. But you know, it's incredibly useful information. It's remarkably useful information. But that's my concern is, you know, that, you know, having useful information doesn't, you know, the reading history is really useful information too, but right now patrons have a way of saying, I don't want that saved. And there isn't the same option for the holds history. So the system is keeping a record of holds history that that identifies which patrons have checked out which books, which is, you know, there's always a privacy concern that I have there. So.
Right. So the preference just to turn the feature on and off?
Yeah, the preference right now is just to make it visible or invisible, I believe. And you have to have, for staff to see the holds history, they have to have the reading history also turned on. But the patron can choose to make the reading history disappear as soon as the items are checked in. The information is deleted from the patron's account. But that option doesn't exist with the holds history as well. So. So that's a concern I have. But
sounds like an opportunity for a cron.
Yeah, well, it sounds to me like I mean, right now, you know, patrons have the ability to go in and say, "Don't save my reading history." That's what we need is a system in place to say, "Don't remember the holds history after these holds are taken care of. I don't want the information saved." So. What else have I got in my notes? The purchase suggestion quantity, I've already written some jQuery to disable that if you don't want that.
George, is that something that you shared?
I shared it on the, well, actually, I shared it with Kelly, and she posted it on the page, and I haven't had a chance to put it on the wiki yet.
Would you put it on your how to do things with Koha?
Yeah, I'll try to.
When you
Let's
have
see. George, what was that again?
The purchase suggestions, when a patron suggests, hey, would you buy a copy of this? There's the form to fill out online. Now there's a field there that says how many copies do you want the library to buy? Which, several people asked during one of the sessions I attended, is there a way to turn that off? And I said, well, gee, I already figured out a way to turn that off. Here it is. And I shared it with them during that session. And Kelly posted it on the notes for that one.
Okay.
Actually, one of the things I'm really excited about is that the patron table, the borrowers table, will now have a date renewed. It'll keep track of when cards are renewed. So that means you can run statistics and say this is how many patrons we've renewed this month, which is another great thing to be able to count. Those are some of the things that I was interested in.
Okay.
And I'm looking at my.
Can you all see the link that I posted for videos for 1711 in the chat?
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing that I like is that you can configure the shelving location can be configured into a separate column in the OPAC display instead of being displayed underneath. Where is it underneath now? I think it's underneath the item type or underneath the collection code, something like that. That'll be a separate column. So once I have time to look at that, I'll try and write some jQuery so that you can reorder the columns if you want. We have our classification schemes based on type, location, home library, and call number, and I want to be able to put them in the order that they classify in. It'll be nice to be able to do that because right now it kind of goes, you have to look here and then underneath this thing and then over here. But putting that in a separate column will be really nice.
So George, is what you're describing for 1711, is that what's found in the administration module on the right-hand side towards the bottom where it says columns? And you can select them or deselect them or select them?
Yeah.
So easy to set up those columns.
Yeah, it really is. And that means that they'll be getting rid of a system preference too on whether or not to show the barcode numbers in the OPAC. That will be, instead of being a system preference, that'll be managed by the column setup, configure columns. So. I don't know how many other people. I actually had total webinar burnout because I'm going to be gone for a week starting like this afternoon. And so I had to I had to go to all the webinars last week, like every frickin' day. There was one day last week, I think I had like 5 meetings. It's like all I did was meetings and lunch. And I was just totally burnt out on watching webinars by the end of the day. So I don't know how many other people have gone through all the webinars yet, but it was a marathon last week. So.
Well, I'm grateful that they're recording them because this is one time that I'm not able to keep up with the live ones. So.
Yeah, I do appreciate that they're recorded too. So.
Nancy, were you the one who caught that when Kelly was trying to check back in that item, the lost item, to find out the associated fees? Was that you? But it didn't check in, so she had to go back and get the system preference. Different Nancy?
I was asking questions by the end just because I knew they wouldn't be able to answer them.
There's so much.
In 1711, didn't they fix when you ask for a new password, the fact that it got mailed out with all your mailings? Doesn't it have its own mail?
Yes, and that actually, that was a bug fix. I don't remember the bug number, but it should be in the next version of 1705 too. I think it should be, it might be in the version that I'm running on 1705 right now. It was I don't know how many of you are using the forgot your password feature for patrons. Well, the problem is that you would the patron would fill out the form that says I forgot my password, and then Koha would say we're going to mail you your a reset link, but that email got put into the message queue. So if you were only sending your message queue, if you were only emailing those from the queue once an hour, it meant that the patron could wait up to 59 minutes before they got the email. And patrons are kind of used to, they fill that out and within 30 seconds they get the email. The bug that was fixed took that out of the message queue and made it happen instantly. And I think that's been patched already back to 17.05.08, I think was where they were going to push that into. So that should be fixed in 17.11 if it isn't fixed in your system already.
Awesome. Any other comments on 17.11? Okay. So open discussion, bugs, issues, etc. Anybody have anything interesting going on in their corner of the universe with Koha that they'd like to talk about?
Well, I just put another bug into the chat window. This is one that isn't going to be fixed in 17.11, but I think it ought to be. If you're using the text messaging, that list of SMS providers does not sort alphabetically. It sorts based on the order that you add the providers to the list. So if you're like me and you set up the whole list with a whole bunch of providers, but you forgot to add Cricket, and then you add Cricket, it shows up at the bottom of the list instead of alphabetically in with the C's, which makes it impossible for staff to find or patrons to find. So I opened a bug on that, and that's the bug over there, that it'd be nice if that list were to sort alphabetically. And so far there's been no activity on that bug. So what would be really great is if everybody here that wants that fixed would go in and say, yeah, this should be fixed, then maybe one of the developers will pay enough attention to it that somebody will jump on that and fix it. That would be, I don't know how many other people are using that, but that's kind of a pain with that feature.
I still need to get SMS working before I do that.
Well, and in the meantime, there's a link to the jQuery section of the wiki where I wrote some jQuery to fix that temporarily.
Of course.
Yeah, of course, because I wasn't going to report a bug that I had fixed already with jQuery.
I'm surprised you haven't written a jQuery to report the jQueries that you've created the moment that you've created them.
I have a report that generates a list of reports that I upload to GitHub so that if I delete a report and I want to go back later because I need it again, I can.
Well, you're close.
I want to bring attention to bug 20396. That's the omnibus clean up Koha and fight feature creep. It's got some bugs in there that I think need to be fixed. And I'm not sure exactly what they're planning to do with these, whether to dump them or work on some of them or what. But there's some bad ones in there.
Give that bug number again.
20396.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
It's somebody went and gathered, I guess, all these bugs that have been out there forever and have never been fixed. And there are some features that have never been implemented. And they just want to clean it up and get either dump the features or fix them or whatever. But there's some bugs in there that I think we really need to support getting fixed. I haven't had time to go through all of them yet, but I plan on doing that. And I think I'd like somebody else to look at them also.
Okay. Yeah, I encourage everybody to take some time and on an occasion go through Bugzilla and see what bugs are standing out there, what features are of interest, and bring them to attention here, and also to reply on those bugs to generate interest in them. The more people that are involved in those bugs, the more attention it generates. So, if one person writes a bug and nobody ever touches it or replies to it, or thinks that this is a great idea to fix, they can sit there for a long time. It's when the developers see that there's a lot of people generating interest and have concern about it that it, tends to move along. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So
I just realized I didn't have the HTTP in those links I posted, so I just posted them again so you can click right on them.
Thank you. Any other bugs or issues?
One thing real quick, and then I have another broader statement. I can't find the, and I've searched the system preferences for that SMS provider list.
Oh, it's not in the preferences. Let me, here, let me share my screen. I can show you right where it is. If I can figure out how to share the screen. There we go. You go to admin, and then SMS cellular providers is the list right here.
Okay, you must have to have that enabled.
Yeah, you have to have the, it seems like there is a preference that has to be enabled.
You have to have something set to email? Yes.
Yeah. So SMS send driver, you have to have email here. And I'm not sure, but I think it has to be with the capital E.
Okay.
But once you put email there, then this SMS cellular providers will show up here.
And
Okay.
the field shows up in the patron account and also on the, I believe on the OPAC when they update their information. I turned that thing on and people started entering numbers for text messages. It's like a little too soon.
Yeah, once it's active, then the patrons will see the text message boxes. They'll see the list of providers. They'll see the numbers. And I've written a lot of jQuery on this to try to solve some problems here. It is possible without some changes to put dashes. It's possible if you put in a number here that isn't 10 digits, it's not going to work right. If you put in a number that's more than 10 digits, that's probably not going to work right. If you don't choose a provider and you put a number in there, that can cause issues too. So there's a lot of things that come up when you turn it on. And I wrote some jQuery to add some text here and to give patrons some more information, like how to set their phone up so that it doesn't they don't get a warning that they've got a new text message at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because that's when our system sends those messages, and there's a lot of things that happen when you start turning on the SMS messages. And I've also written some reports to help our libraries track down the bounce messages, because those, if the text message doesn't go through, it bounces back to the library's email address, and then you've got to figure out which patron has the SMS number that's bouncing. So I think there's a lot of stuff going on there, Joel.
I think a lot of what you've added there, is real common sense stuff. You ought to submit that as a bug and say, this just needs to be glued in there permanently.
And I think there is a bug there to fix some of those issues. I think the bug that if you put in a number without selecting a provider, I think that's been patched already. So,
what would you say? It's a successful feature. I know people were saying in the past that it was there were some bugs with the SMS messaging.
Initially, when we turned it on, and I don't remember what version that was, the first time that we were told it worked right, we turned it on, and the only thing that worked were the hey, you just checked an item in, or hey, you just checked an item out. The ones that didn't work were the you have a hold available, or you have an item due, or you have an item overdue. None of those messages worked the first time we turned it on, which was a colossal pain in the ass. There are also some other issues that you have to, if you don't format the text message correctly for item check-in and item check-out, it will, like if you check out 5 items, it'll generate a message that says you checked out an item, you checked out an item, you checked out an item. You'll have a whole bunch of text in there. So you have to put some dashes in there to include the item detail. That's explained in the on the wiki and then in the stuff about notices and slips, which I think Barton wrote. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Koha wiki notices.
Hey George, can you put a link to your SQL queries in the chat as well?
Those are on those are on the wiki, the community wiki.
Oh, good. You've added them all.
Yeah.
Great.
The notices and slips under checkout and check-in, you have to maybe I should do maybe this, I'm thinking there's a lot of components to this. Maybe this would be a good presentation for the convention.
Yeah.
Because there's just a lot of elements that go on as soon as you turn that on. The more and more I think about it, the more and more it's probably like a good 45-minute explanation of everything that you have to think of if you're going to turn this feature on.
Go to the Koha-Con website and make a proposal.
Yeah, I probably will.
I think it'd be a good one.
I'll fill you in too on our progress because I still have to do some troubleshooting to figure out why we're not getting some of our messages out. So still troubleshooting that one.
Yeah, this looks pretty complicated.
It isn't in theory, but our problem has been, we turn it on and, I tested with Lisette. She's using her number on her system and it goes through just fine. And I put her number on our system, same provider and everything, and the message won't go out. So I still have to go in there and in fact, Lisette, I need to talk with you later. I need to troubleshoot with you again and time that so that Bywater can see examples of your message going out on your system and not going out on my system and find out why it's not working. So
yeah, that's one of the occasions when you end up screaming at the computer, there is no reason why this shouldn't be working. I know that one all too well from adding the zebra index.
Then you find this hidden switch you didn't know about that wasn't documented.
Yeah,
documented. Oh.
Maybe you didn't capitalize your E in email.
Yes, there you go.
Or maybe it should be hyphenated.
Okay. Yeah, somewhere down the line it'd be nice if some of you could share your experiences with setting this up. I've had 1 or 2 libraries express interest in this, but at this point it looks like a pretty daunting task.
Now that we've got it up and running, I would say the most difficult part of it is that people say, "Well, I never got the text message about that." which is the same as true with email. But there are all these questions about why doesn't this work for some people? Why is this seem to be working for some people and not for others? And the other question that comes up a lot is why isn't TracFone on the list? Because TracFone doesn't own any of their own phone numbers, and same with Straight Talk. And it seems like there's one other that, it's because they don't have their own networks. They just buy time on other people's networks. So,
and I had
Joel, it really is not overly complicated. Like, the basics, the basic core of it's like George pointed out, you go into that setting and put the word email in there, and it's active, and then all you have to do is provide a list of providers, and that's fairly simple to set up. All you have to do is, in fact, people are sharing their lists of providers to plug in there, so you plug those in, and then it's pretty much ready to go.
The trick that I did to make sure that I could get the list of providers in there without people, starting to use it before I was ready for it was I did that all like in the middle of the night when all the libraries were closed.
Yeah, you can't put the providers in there unless you turn it on.
Yeah. And so I turned it on like at 11 o'clock, and I put in a bunch of providers, and then I took the email out of there and closed it for the evening, and then the next night I went back in and put in some more providers. And so it was a lot of late night work. So
that's the one thing that cracks me up. You have to turn the feature on before you set it up, and why they hid the setup for the providers, and incorporated it into the turning that whole thing on. I don't understand that. That's kind of a little backwards on that one.
I think Joel still had something else he wanted to add.
Oh, sorry, Joel.
A couple things here. Yeah, I'd be interested in where someone's sharing their list of providers. Save some legwork. Also, I've got a broader question, and this is for those of you who are in consortia. My consortium is getting really, really frustrated with the fact that it seems like in the last few years, 3-4 years, development has been basically targeted towards either single institutions or standalone libraries, and we don't get really any consortia features. Is anybody else feeling frustrated by that?
Yes.
Yeah, I see Lisette shaking her head. Jason, Christopher, George?
I can't really think of anything that we've been too upset about with lately. I mean, usually when the big stuff gets put in, we can use it, like text messaging. We've got that running. So I guess that's a no from us.
Okay.
We focus a lot on trying to get everybody on the same page to do the same things. Occasionally there's a feature that, we wish that we could control from library to library, but for the most part, like I said, we're trying to be on the same page. So it doesn't affect us as much as it could, simply because of that that common workflow ethic that we're trying to push in the consortium.
The one feature that I really wanted when I was at ValNet is one that when we were at the conference last year in Coeur d'Alene, there were some people from ValNet there that had decided they wanted to move forward with it, and they were going to get the money together to do that. And I said, this feature is not as important to me now that I'm in Kansas because it doesn't have the same impact on our system here, but I'd be willing to contribute to that. And they said great, and because of the nature of ValNet, I think they haven't moved forward with that. So
that was one too that Christopher had brought up some concerns about when we took it to INLG, and so when we tried to talk to Bywater about it, they were like, we're doing this part of it anyway, this is happening, and when this is done, we'll come back and talk to you about these things. So that's why nothing has happened with that. And I think that is, I think the first part is getting pushed in 1805. And so hopefully soon we'll be able to
refresh everybody's memory on that, because we're kind of talking around it.
Yeah, sorry. So this was the local holds priority basically within a district. So we could say if Latah County Library District has a copy, Latah County Library District patrons will get it before sending it out to the rest of the consortium. And Christopher, I don't have the list in front of me right now of the concerns that you had brought up about it, and we want to make sure that we, don't gunk it up for everybody else if we're doing that.
Was that using like library groups?
Yeah, yes. So the hierarchical systems, which is let me go find that bug.
Yeah, that would be a great feature.
Yeah, so they were already working on the hierarchical systems, like some of the underlying stuff that they'd have to do before looking at this. We're making the search group, instead of just search groups, making the hierarchical groups functional.
Yeah, and we have issues with permissions and granularity as well. Do any of you have concerns with that? I mean, there's certain staff that we don't want to be able to do certain things, and in most cases it's kind of an all or nothing choice.
We have a few issues with that, but we have a few issues with that here, but not any that are insurmountable.
Yeah, that's been a concern for us forever too, but we've got our policies in place now where like people can't use cataloging unless they've been trained on cataloging. So we've kind of gotten around some of the problems that we had in the past with that by using policies, and people can still get around it obviously, but for the most part, they're scared enough of me that they don't do it.
Joel, do you have an open ticket on any of those concerns?
No, well, yeah, actually there is one. Let me, it's quite an old one.
Because I think, if there are ongoing concerns and issues, definitely file a bug. And, we're trying to coordinate with consortiums here with koha-US to, work together to push some things for consortium. So it's something that we can definitely say, hey, we've got consortiums here. Let's put some energy behind this, and at least generate some talk and interest on those bugs. So.
Yeah, actually, I've got one. It's bug 12793. That'll tell you how old. That's from 2014. Basically, it's about staff permissions and making them more granular, and independent branches did not work for us because that was too restrictive. I got one comment that said they would support this. If others, the more of us there are that are in favor of this, the more likely we can get the ball rolling. So again, that's bug number 12793.
Lisette, did you come up with your bug number?
Yeah, so it's so the first part of it is 16735, which is the underlying hierarchical systems, and I'm not finding one about the local holds priority, so I'm filling it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just put a link to that bug in the chat box there.
Great, thank you. All right, folks, we are at the end of our hour here. a quick go around with committees to find out if there are any updates, and then we're going to close up shop. Anything from the fundraising committee?
You're muted, George.
Sign language.
That's perfect.
All right.
I got a letter back from Vicki that she was going to edit that letter for us, and I got it back yesterday or the day before, I think, and I'll share that with the other members of the fundraising committee, hopefully today.
Great. And that's just the confirmation?
Yes, exactly.
For new members? Excellent. All right. Anything from Finance Committee?
The full report is located on the agenda. 3 big things to note. We are now fully in compliance with our federal reporting. If you attended Coeur d'Alene last year, very shortly you will be receiving an invitation to join koha-US, although some of us have already gone ahead and done that. But if you did attend Coeur d'Alene last year, you'll be getting a letter from me, essentially written by the board, and going ahead to invite you to join. And we're doing well financially. We've had no problems. Since we are now complete through the first quarter of the year, there's actually a more detailed breakdown of where we are in terms of income and expense, and that's all fully detailed in that monthly Finance Committee report. Thank you, as always, to Candace for her review of the document and to the board for their input as well.
And you still need another member, don't you?
Yes, with the sad resignation of Jason Palmer, I am looking to fill a position for anybody that might happen to be interested in it. If you are interested in serving on the Finance Committee, do go ahead and email me at treasurer@koha-us.org, and I will be in touch with you. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, John, I have to laugh every time you say Coeur d'Alene, because you say it like it looks, but it's actually Coeur d'Alene.
Oh. Hey, you should have heard me pronounce it before I even knew the city existed. So
it gets me every time. So you're not the first. All right, and conference committee, we don't have anything going yet. We're hoping to gear up in June with Bywater. Todd has reached out to me and given me some more information about that. So we're going to be heavily involved in planning and possibly working with them on the just, you know, sorry.
Proposals,
yes,
things that we sent in, yeah, evaluating proposals.
My brain's shutting down here.
And scheduling, so yeah, no worries.
So we're moving forward with that, and you know, we'll see some more momentum this next month. But I am getting stuff on the website for links to share for that that conference, and we're looking forward to it. So more to come.
And we may end up being the Michael Cohen of the KohaCon. Funnel all those donations into us, and then we'll help pay for KohaCon to keep it tax deductible.
Might be.
How do I mute this?
I think I could mute you, but because I'm in control of the meeting, so I could just go like that. But I don't think you guys can mute me. So,
folks, there's a lot of links that are over in the chat. So if you haven't had a chance and you haven't opened up your chat, make sure you go over there and click on those things so you've got them open.
Yep. Copy and paste quickly. All right.
You can actually send yourself the chat. You can save it under the More option if you were not aware of that feature.
Oh, excellent.
Yep,
Awesome.
and I can post them with the minutes too. So.
All right.
Cool, Jace.
So, Jason, next meetings?
Next meetings, June 6th is our next board meeting, 10:30 Central, whatever that is for you guys. And then June 13th is our next general meeting. 10:30 as well.
Same channel.
time. Yep.
All right.
And George, is our fundraising meeting going to take place as usual? Or?
it should. That would be on May 29th, which is the day after Memorial Day.
Cool.
So fun first day back after the long weekend.
All right, folks. Thank you very much for coming. It's a good meeting and more exciting stuff to come. And we will see you next month.
Koha, spread the word.
Yep.
I will be.
See ya.
You won't
All
get a
right.
preview.
Goodbye.
See y'all later. I'm going to click end for all.